The stagecoach rattled to a halt outside the marshal's office in Wood River, Nevada, and Bella Jensen stepped down into the dust with a leather case clutched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The afternoon sun beat mercilessly on the single main street, reflecting off the false-fronted buildings that lined both sides like crooked teeth. She had hoped to arrive under cover of darkness, hoped to slip into town unnoticed, but the wheel had broken 30 miles back, and the driver had spent 4 hours fixing it while she sat in the suffocating heat, watching her carefully laid plans crumble like dried bread. Wood River was smaller than she had imagined. The mining town had seen better days, judging by the abandoned storefronts and the general air of decline that hung over everything like morning fog. Still, it was remote enough, tucked away in the Nevada territory where perhaps her past would not follow, where perhaps she could finally breathe without looking over her shoulder. Bella adjusted her dark blue traveling dress and surveyed the street. A saloon dominated one corner, its painted sign faded to near illegibility. Across the way stood a general store, a boarding house with peeling white paint, and what appeared to be a livery stable at the far end. A few men loitered outside the saloon, their eyes following her with the kind of interest a woman traveling alone always attracted in these frontier towns. She straightened her spine and started toward the boarding house, her boots clicking against the wooden boardwalk. The weight of what she carried, both in her case and in her heart, made each step feel like walking through knee-deep water. "Miss, you dropped something." The voice came from behind her, low and steady. Bella turned to find a man holding out her handkerchief, the one embroidered with her initials that her mother had given her before everything fell apart. He stood perhaps 6 feet tall, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of creek water after a storm. Dust covered his clothes, worn but well-maintained, and a Colt revolver sat holstered at his hip with the ease of long familiarity. "Thank you," she said, reaching for the handkerchief. Their fingers brushed briefly, and she pulled back as if burned. "Isaac Cross," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I run cattle up in the high country, just came into town for supplies. Bella Jensen." She folded the handkerchief carefully, tucking it into her sleeve. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Cross." "Most folks around here are honest, Miss Jensen. It's a good town, despite appearances." He glanced at her leather case. "You planning on staying long?" The question was innocent enough, but Bella felt her chest tighten. "I'm looking for work, actually. I'm a teacher." "A teacher?" His eyebrows rose slightly. "Well, you came at the right time. Old Miss Patterson passed last winter, and the schoolhouse has been sitting empty ever since. The town council has been trying to find someone to take her place." Hope flickered in Bella's chest, fragile as candlelight in the wind. "Do you know who I should speak with?" "Harold Morrison runs the general store. He's on the council. I could walk you over there if you like." She wanted to say yes. Something about Isaac Cross made her feel safer than she had in months. But safety was an illusion, and the last thing she needed was to draw attention by arriving with a local rancher at her side. "That's kind of you, but I can manage. Thank you again for returning my handkerchief." He studied her for a moment, and Bella had the uncomfortable sensation that he could see right through her carefully constructed facade to the fear beneath. But he simply nodded and stepped back. "Welcome to Wood River, Miss Jensen. I hope you find what you're looking for." She watched him walk away toward the general store, his gait easy and unhurried, before turning toward the boarding house. Her hands were shaking, and she pressed them against her sides to still them. The boarding house proprietor was a thin woman named Agnes Carmichael who asked few questions and seemed content to accept Bella's story at face value. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the street. Bella set her case on the bed and sank down beside it, suddenly exhausted. She had been running for 3 months. 3 months since she had discovered what James Halstead really was. 3 months since she had made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. 3 months since she had become complicit in something terrible, even if her role had been unwitting. The leather case sat beside her, innocent-looking. Inside were her teaching certificates, letters of reference that were absolutely genuine, and a false name on some of the documents that would not hold up under serious scrutiny. Also inside, hidden in the lining, was $3,000 in banknotes, money that did not belong to her. Money she had taken from James Halstead's safe when she fled Denver. She had not stolen it, she told herself for the 1,000th time. It was compensation for what he had done, for what he had made her part of, however unknowingly. But the law would not see it that way. The law would see a woman who had lived with a man outside of marriage, a woman who had helped him entertain business associates in their home, a woman who had access to his private papers. The law would see an accomplice, or at best, a thief. Bella stood and moved to the window, watching the street below. A wagon rolled past, kicking up dust. 2 women in bonnets walked arm in arm toward the general store, their heads bent together in conversation. Normal life. The kind of life she desperately wanted. She had been engaged to James Halstead. That much was true. She had met him in St. Louis, where she had been teaching at a girls' academy. He had been charming, successful, generous with his attention and his gifts. When he asked her to marry him, she had said yes without hesitation. When he asked her to come to Denver with him before the wedding, promising they would be married as soon as they arrived, she had been foolish enough to agree. There had been no wedding in Denver. There had been excuses at first, delays, business complications. By the time she understood that James Halstead had no intention of marrying her, she was already compromised, already living in his house, already serving as his hostess when he entertained, already trapped. She had stayed because she had nowhere to go. Her teaching position was lost. Her reputation was ruined. Her parents were dead. Her brother was somewhere in California, and she had no way to reach him. So she had stayed and told herself that eventually he would keep his promise, that eventually everything would be all right. Until the night she overheard him talking to his business partners. Until she understood that the silver mining operation he claimed to run was actually a front for stealing money from investors. Until she realized that the men who came to their house were not business associates, but criminals. Until she discovered that James Halstead was planning to disappear with a fortune built on fraud, leaving his investors penniless and her to face the consequences. She had fled that very night, taking only what she could carry and the money from his safe. Blood money, possibly. Stolen money, certainly. But also her only chance at survival. Bella pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. She had to make this work. She had to become someone new, someone respectable. A schoolteacher in a small mining town where no one asked too many questions. It was possible. It had to be possible. The next morning she presented herself at Morrison's general store just after it opened. Harold Morrison was a portly man in his 50s with kind eyes and a welcoming manner. He listened to her credentials with growing interest, examining her teaching certificates with care. "These are from quite prestigious institutions," he said, looking up at her over his spectacles. "What brings you all the way to Wood River, Miss Jensen? We're rather off the beaten path." Bella had prepared for this question. "I wanted to go somewhere I could make a real difference, Mr. Morrison. In the cities, there are plenty of qualified teachers. Out here, I thought my skills might be more needed." It was not entirely a lie. She had always believed in the importance of education, especially for children in remote areas. If she had to hide, at least she could do some good while she did it. Morrison smiled. Well, you're right about being needed. We have about 20 children of school age in town and the surrounding ranches, and they've been running wild since Miss Patterson passed. When could you start? Immediately, if you need me. The salary is not grand. $40 a month, and we can provide housing in the small cottage behind the schoolhouse. It needs some fixing up, but it's sound. $40 a month was barely enough to live on, but Bella nodded eagerly. That would be acceptable. Excellent. Let me gather the rest of the council and we'll make it official. Can you come back this afternoon, say around 2 o'clock? Bella agreed and left the store feeling lighter than she had in weeks. This could work. This could actually work. She spent the morning exploring the town, getting her bearings. Wood River had sprung up during the silver boom of the 1860s, and while the richest veins had played out, there was still enough mining activity to keep the town alive, if not exactly thriving. The population was maybe 300 people, a mix of miners, ranchers, merchants, and the various people who served them. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple wooden structure with a bell tower and a small yard surrounded by a rickety fence. Bella peered through the dusty windows at the interior. Desks sat in crooked rows, a slate board hung on one wall and shelves lined another. It needed cleaning and organizing, but it had good bones. Behind the schoolhouse stood the cottage Morrison had mentioned. It was tiny, just 2 rooms, but it had a stone fireplace and the roof looked solid. Bella tried the door and found it unlocked. Inside, everything was covered in dust and mouse droppings littered the floor, but there was a bed frame, a table, 2 chairs, and a small stove. With some work, it could be home. She was standing in the doorway, imagining curtains on the windows and a fire in the hearth when a voice startled her. So you're taking the teaching position. Isaac Cross sat astride a bay horse, a pack mule tied behind him. He must have just finished his supply run. Bella stepped out of the cottage, shielding her eyes from the sun. If the council approves, yes. He dismounted, moving with an easy grace that suggested years in the saddle. They'll approve. They're desperate. Though I have to say, you seem overqualified for a place like Wood River. There it was again, that sense that he could see more than she wanted him to. Education is important everywhere, Mr. Cross. Call me Isaac, please. He walked closer, and Bella fought the urge to step back. And you're right. My sister will be glad to hear we have a proper teacher again. She's been trying to teach my nephew herself, but she's got 3 little ones and a ranch to help run. It's been difficult. Your nephew is school age, just turned 8. Smart as a whip, but needs proper instruction. I told Margaret about you last night, and she was thrilled. In fact, she wanted me to invite you to Sunday supper if you're settled by then. It would be a chance to meet some of the families whose children you'll be teaching. The invitation was kind, but it made Bella nervous. The more people she met, the more chances someone might recognize her or ask questions she could not answer. But refusing would seem strange and might raise suspicions. That's very thoughtful. I would be happy to come. Good. I'll send word once you're official. He glanced at the cottage. This place needs work. I could send a couple of my ranch hands over to help you clean it up, fix anything that's broken. I couldn't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. We take care of our own in Wood River, Miss Jensen, and you're one of us now. His words created an unexpected tightness in her throat. When was the last time someone had offered to help her without wanting something in return? Thank you, Isaac. That's very kind. He smiled, and the expression transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made Bella's heart skip. Welcome to Wood River, he said again, then swung back into his saddle. I'll see you on Sunday." She watched him ride away, the pack mule trailing obediently behind. Something about Isaac Cross unsettled her, but not in a threatening way. It was more that he seemed to look at her like she mattered, like she was worth knowing. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her that way. The council meeting that afternoon was brief and unanimous. Bella was officially hired as the new schoolteacher, to begin the following Monday. That gave her 5 days to prepare the schoolhouse and cottage, to create lesson plans, and to steel herself for the role she would play for however long she could maintain it. True to Isaac's word, 2 ranch hands appeared at the cottage the next morning with cleaning supplies, tools, and cheerful attitudes. They fixed the broken window latch, reinforced the porch steps, and helped her scrub years of accumulated grime from every surface. By evening, the little cottage gleamed, and Bella had moved her few belongings from the boarding house. She spent the next few days cleaning and organizing the schoolhouse, creating a welcoming environment for her future students. Agnes Carmichael donated some curtains. Harold Morrison provided fresh slates and chalk from his store. Other townspeople brought books, a globe with outdated geography, and a flag that had clearly seen better days. Each gift touched Bella deeply. These people knew nothing about her, yet they were welcoming her into their community without hesitation. It made the weight of her deception even heavier. Sunday arrived with clear skies and a warm breeze that carried the scent of sage from the surrounding hills. Isaac appeared at her cottage just after noon, driving a wagon instead of riding his horse. "Margaret said to bring you in the wagon since you'll want to wear something nice," he explained, jumping down to help her up. "She also said to warn you that she's made enough food to feed an army, so come hungry." Bella settled onto the bench seat, acutely aware of Isaac's proximity as he climbed up beside her. She had chosen her best dress, a soft green calico that brought out her eyes, and had spent extra time arranging her dark hair. She told herself it was just to make a good impression on her future students' families, but she knew that was not entirely true. The Cross Ranch lay about 5 miles outside of town, accessible by a well-maintained road that wound through hills dotted with juniper and sagebrush. As they drove, Isaac pointed out landmarks and shared bits of local history. Bella found herself relaxing, drawn in by his easy manner and genuine warmth. "How long have you been ranching?" she asked. "All my life, really. My father started this ranch back in '58. It was rough going at first, but he built it into something solid. When he died 6 years ago, it passed to me and Margaret. Her husband, Thomas, helps run it. We run about 500 head of cattle plus horses. That sounds like a lot of work. It is, but it's good work, honest work." He glanced at her. "I know that might sound simple, but I've always believed there's value in building something real, something that will last. The ranch will be here long after I'm gone, providing for my family and the families of the people who work for me." There was such integrity in his words that Bella felt a stab of shame. Everything about her life right now was a lie. Nothing she had built was real or lasting. She was a house of cards waiting for the wind to blow. "That must be very satisfying," she managed. "It is." He smiled at her. "Teaching is like that too, I imagine. Every child you educate is a legacy. My father used to say that the future is built by what we do today, not by what we regret from yesterday." Bella's breath caught. If only that were true. If only she could believe that her future mattered more than her past. But how could it, when her past was a weight she carried everywhere, threatening to crush her under its burden? The ranch house came into view, a sprawling structure of wood and stone that looked like it had grown organically from the landscape. Corrals spread out behind it, and a large barn dominated one side of the property. Horses grazed in a nearby pasture, and the whole scene radiated prosperity and permanence. A woman emerged from the house as they pulled up, wiping her hands on her apron. She had Isaac's coloring but softer features, and her face lit up when she saw them. "You must be Miss Jensen. I'm Margaret Wallace. I'm so pleased you could come." She helped Bella down from the wagon with a firm grip. "Come inside, please. Everyone is eager to meet you." The interior of the house was warm and welcoming, filled with comfortable furniture and the mouth-watering smell of roasting meat. A tall man with a weathered face and kind eyes stepped forward to introduce himself as Thomas Wallace, Margaret's husband. 3 small children peeked shyly from behind their mother's skirts, and a boy of about 8 stood straighter, clearly trying to appear mature. "This is little Thomas, named for his father, but we call him Tommy to avoid confusion. And these are Sarah, Mary, and baby Joseph." Margaret gestured to each child in turn. "Tommy will be one of your students." Bella knelt down to Tommy's level. "I'm very pleased to meet you, Tommy. What subjects do you like best?" The boy's reserve cracked slightly. "Reading, Miss Jensen. I like stories about adventures and faraway places." "Then we're going to get along very well, because I love stories too." Other families arrived over the next hour. Miners and their wives, ranch workers, a few merchants from town. Each family had children who would attend the school, and Bella made a point of learning every name, every face. These would be her students, her responsibility. Despite everything, she felt genuine excitement about teaching again. This was the one part of her life that had always felt right, the one thing she knew she was good at. Dinner was a boisterous affair, with multiple conversations happening simultaneously and children running between the adults like quicksilver. Bella found herself seated between Isaac and a miner named Samuel, who wanted to discuss the importance of mathematics in practical applications. Isaac occasionally caught her eye across the table and smiled, as if they shared a private joke. After the meal, the adults gathered on the porch while the children played in the yard. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Bella stood at the railing, watching the children and thinking about lesson plans when Isaac joined her. "You're going to be good for this town," he said quietly. "I hope so." "I know so. I watched you with the children. You genuinely care about them." "That's what they need. Someone who sees them as individuals, not just obligations." Bella looked at him, at the sincerity in his face, and felt that dangerous flutter in her chest again. She should not let herself feel this. She should not let herself care about Isaac Cross or his family or this town, because eventually her past would catch up with her. Eventually she would have to run again. And the more connections she made here, the more it would hurt when she left. "What made you become a teacher?" Isaac asked. The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. How much truth could she tell? "My mother was a teacher," she said finally. "She taught me to read when I was very young, and I fell in love with books, with learning, with the idea that knowledge could open doors. When she died, I wanted to honor her memory by doing the same for others." This, at least, was true. Her mother had been a teacher, had instilled in Bella a love of learning. That part of her story was real. "She would be proud of you," Isaac said. Bella's eyes stung with unexpected tears. "I hope so." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun sink lower. Then Isaac said, "Can I ask you something personal?" Her heart began to pound. "You can ask." "Are you running from something?" The question hung in the air between them, dangerous and unavoidable. Bella's first instinct was to deny it, to laugh it off, to retreat behind her carefully constructed lies. But something about Isaac made her want to be honest, even if she could not tell him everything. "Yes," she whispered. He nodded slowly, as if he had expected this answer. "Is it going to follow you here? Is it going to put you or anyone else in danger? I don't know, she admitted. I hope not. I've been careful. The thing you're running from, did you do something wrong? This was harder to answer. Had she done something wrong? She had lived with a man outside of marriage. That was wrong by society's standards. She had taken money that did not belong to her. That was definitely wrong, even if she believed she had good reasons. But had she done something that deserved the punishment that would come if James Halstead found her? I don't think so, she said finally, but others might see it differently. Isaac turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Listen to me, Bella. I don't know what happened before you came here, and you don't have to tell me unless you want to. But I want you to know something. Whatever is in your past, it doesn't change who you are now. It doesn't change that you're a good person who cares about teaching children. It doesn't change that you deserve a fresh start. His words were so unexpected, so generous, that Bella felt tears spill over onto her cheeks. How can you say that? You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you're kind and educated and brave enough to come to a rough town like this to make a difference. I know that children light up around you. I know that you carry sadness in your eyes, but you're still trying to move forward. He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Whatever regrets you're carrying, Bella, our future matters more than your past ever did. The words broke something open inside her. She turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Isaac's hand came to rest on her shoulder, warm and steady. I'm sorry, she managed. I shouldn't be falling apart like this. You're not falling apart, you're being human. His voice was gentle. We all have things we regret, Bella. We all have parts of our past we wish we could change, but we can't change them. We can only decide who we want to be moving forward. She turned back to him, studying his face in the fading light. Why are you being so kind to me? He smiled, a soft expression that made her heart ache. Because I see something in you that I recognize, someone who's trying to do better to be better. And because, he hesitated, then continued, because from the moment I picked up your handkerchief in the street, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. Bella's breath caught. This was dangerous. This was exactly what she could not allow to happen. But she could not seem to make herself step away from him, could not break the connection forming between them. Isaac, I can't. There are things you don't know, things I can't tell you. Then don't tell me. Not yet. Not until you're ready. He took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. Just give this place a chance. Give yourself a chance. And maybe, if you're willing, give me a chance to know you better. She should say no. She should pull her hand away and rebuild the walls she had let him glimpse behind. But standing there on the porch, with the last rays of sunlight painting everything gold, with this man looking at her like she was something precious, Bella could not make herself refuse. All right, she whispered. His smile was like sunrise, and when he squeezed her hand gently, Bella felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The school opened on a Monday morning in late September with 22 students ranging from age 6 to 14. Bella had arranged the desks by age group and prepared lessons for multiple skill levels. She rang the bell at 8 o'clock sharp, and children came streaming in from all directions, some walking from town, others arriving with parents who worked at nearby ranches. Tommy Wallace took a seat in the front row, his expression eager. Two girls about his age sat nearby, whispering and giggling. The older students clustered in the back, clearly testing her with their sullen expressions and crossed arms. Bella stood before them, heart pounding but voice steady. Good morning. My name is Miss Jensen, and I'm honored to be your new teacher. I know you've been without proper instruction for several months, and that many of you have fallen behind in your studies. But I want you to know that I'm here to help each of you succeed, no matter where you're starting from. She spent the morning assessing their abilities, giving each student simple tasks in reading, writing, and arithmetic. The results were as varied as she had expected. Some, like Tommy, were reading at or above grade level. Others could barely write their names. But every single child, even the sullen teenagers in the back, showed at least a spark of interest when she engaged them individually. By the end of the first day, Bella was exhausted but exhilarated. This was what she had been meant to do. This was where she belonged. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. School days were long and demanding but rewarding. In the evenings, Bella prepared lessons, graded work, and gradually made her little cottage into a home. The town had accepted her completely, inviting her to church socials, asking her advice on matters both educational and personal, treating her like the respectable school teacher she was pretending to be. And Isaac was there, always. He came to town at least twice a week, always managing to find a reason to stop by the schoolhouse. Sometimes he brought fresh eggs from Margaret or firewood for her stove. Sometimes he invited her to Sunday supper at the ranch, which had become a regular occurrence. Sometimes he simply showed up as she was closing the school and walked her home, making conversation about everything and nothing. Bella knew she was falling for him. She tried to maintain her distance, tried to remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but Isaac made it impossible. He was patient and kind, making her laugh with stories about ranch life, listening intently when she talked about her students, never pushing for more than she was willing to give. 2 months after her arrival in Wood River, Isaac invited her on a picnic. It was a Saturday afternoon, unseasonably warm for November, and he arrived at her cottage with a basket and that smile that always made her chest tighten. "Margaret packed enough food for a small army as usual," he said. "I thought we could ride up to Eagle Point. The view is spectacular and the aspen leaves are changing. It's worth seeing." Bella knew she should refuse. Allowing Isaac to court her, which is what this clearly was, would only make everything more complicated. But she was tired of being alone. Tired of carrying her secrets with no one to share them with. Tired of denying herself even small moments of happiness because of what might happen in the future. "That sounds lovely," she said. They rode out of town on Isaac's horses, Bella on a gentle mare named Daisy. The trail wound up into the hills, climbing steadily through groves of aspen that had turned brilliant gold. The air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and fallen leaves. Eagle Point turned out to be a rocky outcropping that offered a panoramic view of the valley below. Wood River looked like a toy town from this height, and the surrounding landscape stretched out in every direction, mountains rising in the distance like the backbone of the world. Isaac spread a blanket on a flat section of rock, and they unpacked Margaret's feast of fried chicken, biscuits, cheese, and apple pie. They ate slowly, talking about small things, laughing at shared jokes, existing in the kind of easy companionship that usually took years to develop. After they had eaten, they sat side by side looking out over the valley. The sun was warm on Bella's face, and for the first time in months, she felt truly at peace. "Can I ask you something?" Isaac said eventually. "You can ask." It was becoming their pattern, this exchange. "The thing you're running from, is it a person?" Bella's peace evaporated, but she had known this conversation would come eventually. Isaac had been patient, had not pushed, but he deserved some answers if he was going to continue spending time with her. "Yes," she said quietly. "Someone who hurt you, in a way." She drew a deep breath. "His name was James Halstead. I was engaged to him, or I thought I was. He promised to marry me, convinced me to come with him to Denver to live with him before the wedding." She felt her cheeks burn with shame. "I was so naive. I believed him. Isaac's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Go on. There was no wedding. He never intended to marry me. By the time I understood that, I was already ruined, already living in his house, already playing hostess to his business associates, already trapped. The words came faster now, a dam breaking. I thought I had no choice but to stay, but then I discovered that his business was a fraud. He was stealing from investors, taking their money and giving them worthless mining claims in return. And I had been helping him, serving drinks to these people, smiling at them, making his operation seem legitimate. But you didn't know, Isaac said firmly. No, but that wouldn't have mattered to the law. I was living in his house. I had access to his papers. When he disappeared with the money, they would have come after me too. She pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. So I ran, and I took money from his safe when I left, $3,000 that didn't belong to me. There. It was out, the worst of it. She waited for Isaac to stand up, to step away from her, to tell her she was a thief and he wanted nothing to do with her. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Where is the money now, hidden in my cottage? I haven't spent any of it except for traveling expenses to get here. I don't even want it. It feels dirty. Was Halstead ever going to pay you for your work as his hostess? For the months you spent managing his household?" Bella blinked, surprised by the question. "I suppose not. I never thought of it that way." "Well, I do. You provided services. You're entitled to compensation. 3,000 might be more than you would have earned, but considering he also stole months of your life and your reputation, I'd say you came out behind." Isaac turned to face her. "Bella, look at me." She met his eyes reluctantly. "You're not a thief. You're someone who was manipulated and used by a man who saw your kindness and intelligence as tools he could exploit. You're someone who got out when you realized what was happening. That takes courage, not criminality. But I took the money. You took partial compensation for services rendered to a criminal who would never have paid you otherwise. There's a difference." He reached out and gently turned her face toward him. "Listen to me. Whatever regrets you're carrying about this situation, you need to let them go. You came here to build a new life, a better life. You're teaching children who desperately need education. You're contributing to this community. That's what matters now, not what happened in Denver. But what if he finds me? What if he sends someone after the money? Then we'll deal with it. You're not alone anymore, Bella. You have a whole town that values you. You have Margaret and Thomas who think you're wonderful. You have students who are learning and growing under your instruction." He paused. "And you have me." Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Isaac, you don't have to do this. You don't have to tie yourself to someone with my kind of past. I'm not tying myself to your past. I'm choosing to be part of your future, if you'll let me." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "Bella, I meant what I said that first night at the ranch. Our future matters more than your past ever did. I believe that with everything in me, and I'm asking you to believe it too." Tears were streaming down her face now, but they were different tears than before. These were tears of relief, of release, of being seen and understood and accepted despite everything. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "That's not for you to decide. I'm a grown man and I know my own mind. I'm falling in love with you, Bella Jensen. I've been falling since the day I picked up your handkerchief, and I'm hoping, if you can trust me enough, that you might be falling too." She was. Heaven help her. She was falling so hard it terrified her. But maybe Isaac was right. Maybe the future did matter more than the past. Maybe she could let go of her regrets and embrace the possibility of something good. "I am," she admitted, "falling for you, but Isaac, I'm scared." "I know, but being scared doesn't mean we can't move forward. It just means we do it together." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and sure and full of promise. Bella melted into him, letting herself feel, letting herself hope. The sun was warm on her back. The view stretched out before them, and for the first time since leaving Denver, she felt like she might actually have a future worth living. They rode back to town as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple. Isaac helped her down from her horse outside her cottage, his hands lingering at her waist. "Can I come calling properly?" he asked. "I know we've been spending time together, but I want to do this right. I want to court you the way you deserve." Bella smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I would like that very much." He kissed her again, briefly, then mounted his horse. "I'll see you on Sunday for supper, and probably before then, knowing me." She watched him ride away, then went inside her cottage and lit the lamp. The space glowed warm in the lamplight, and for the first time, it truly felt like home. The next few months were the happiest Bella had known in years. Isaac came calling twice a week, always proper, always respectful, but the attraction between them grew with each visit. He brought her wildflowers in the spring, helped her plant a small garden behind her cottage, sat with her on the porch in the evenings and talked about their dreams for the future. The school year progressed beautifully. Her students were thriving, even the older ones who had been so resistant at first. Tommy Wallace was reading at a level that would have impressed students in the finest city schools. The younger children were mastering their letters and numbers. Even the children from the poorest families, who came to school in patched clothes and worn shoes, were learning and growing. Bella had also started a small lending library, using books donated by townspeople and a few she had purchased with her teaching salary. Children and adults alike borrowed books, and the schoolhouse became a center of community life, hosting spelling bees and recitals and town meetings. She was making a difference. She was building something real and lasting, just as Isaac had described his ranch. The guilt she carried about the money hidden in her cottage began to fade. She still had not touched it, but she thought less and less about James Halstead and more about her future in Wood River. Spring gave way to summer, and Isaac finally asked the question Bella had been both hoping for and dreading. They were sitting on her porch after supper, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Isaac had been quiet all evening, and Bella could sense something was on his mind. "Bella, I need to ask you something important." Her heart began to race. "All right." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I love you. I've loved you for months now, and every day I love you more. I love your kindness and your intelligence and your dedication to your students. I love the way you laugh at my terrible jokes and the way you look in the morning light when you don't think anyone is watching. I love who you are, all of who you are, past included." Bella's eyes filled with tears. "Isaac, let me finish. I know you're scared. I know you still worry that your past is going to catch up with you. But I also know that we're stronger together than apart. And I believe with everything in me that our future, our life together, is more important than anything that happened before." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Bella Jensen, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, modest but beautiful. Bella looked at the ring, then at Isaac's hopeful face, and felt the last of her resistance crumble. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile could have lit the entire town. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the love and promise she had never dared dream she might find. They were married in early July in the small church at the center of town. Margaret had insisted on making Bella's wedding dress, a beautiful creation of ivory silk with lace at the collar and cuffs. The whole town turned out for the ceremony, cramming into the small church until people spilled out onto the steps. Tommy Wallace served as ring bearer, his face serious with the importance of his task. Bella had never felt more beautiful than she did walking down the aisle toward Isaac, who stood at the altar in a new suit, his eyes shining with love. When the preacher asked if anyone objected to their union, Bella's heart stopped for a moment. But there was only supportive silence, followed by Isaac's steady voice saying, "I do," and then her own voice, surprisingly strong, making the same promise. They held the reception at the ranch, where Margaret had outdone herself with food and decorations. There was dancing and music and toasts, and Bella was embraced by the community as one of their own. Harold Morrison gave a speech about how Bella had brought learning back to Wood River. Samuel, the miner, talked about how his daughter could now write letters to her grandmother back east. Agnes Carmichael, the boarding house proprietor who had first welcomed Bella to town, wiped tears from her eyes and declared it the most beautiful wedding she had ever seen. As the sun set and the celebration continued around them, Isaac pulled Bella aside for a private moment. They stood under an old cottonwood tree, the music and laughter drifting across the yard. "Happy Mrs. Cross?" he asked, using her new name for the first time. "Happier than I have any right to be," she admitted. "You have every right to be happy. You've earned it." He cupped her face in his hands. "I promise you, Bella, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I could never regret you, Isaac. You saved me." "No," he said firmly. "You saved yourself. You had the courage to leave a bad situation. You had the strength to start over. You had the determination to build a new life. All I did was recognize what was already there and love you for it." Bella kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. All her gratitude, all her love, all her hope for their future together. They spent their wedding night in a small cabin on the far edge of the ranch property, a place Isaac had built himself years ago. It was simple but comfortable, with a fireplace and a large bed covered in quilts. Isaac carried her over the threshold, making her laugh, and then set her down gently. What followed was tender and sweet, and everything Bella had never experienced with James Halstead. Isaac was patient and attentive, making sure she felt cherished and safe. When they finally came together, it felt like a promise fulfilled, like two halves becoming whole. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Bella felt truly at peace for the first time in years. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Isaac replied, his hand stroking her hair. "And I'm going to keep loving you every day for the rest of our lives." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Bella continued teaching during the school year, and Isaac ran the ranch with Thomas. They lived in a house Isaac built for them between the main ranch house and the town, close enough to both but private enough to feel like their own little world. Margaret and Bella became close friends, and the two families spent many evenings together. Bella helped Margaret teach the younger children their letters, and Margaret taught Bella the practical skills of ranch life like preserving food and tending animals. A year after their wedding, Bella discovered she was expecting their first child. The pregnancy was easy, and Isaac was attentive to the point of being overprotective. Margaret teased him mercilessly about hovering, but Bella secretly loved how much he cared. Their son was born in the spring of 1876, a healthy baby with dark hair and his father's storm-colored eyes. They named him Daniel, after Isaac's father. Holding her son for the first time, feeling his small weight in her arms, Bella was overwhelmed with love and gratitude. This baby, this perfect little person, represented everything good about her new life. Isaac was a devoted father from the first moment. He rocked Daniel when he fussed, changed his diapers without complaint, and talked to him constantly, even though the baby could not possibly understand. Watching her husband with their son, Bella fell even more deeply in love with him. When the school year started again, Bella brought baby Daniel with her to the classroom. She had discussed it with the town council, worried they might object, but everyone was supportive. The older girls fought over who got to hold him during recess, and the younger children loved having a baby in the room. It turned into unexpected teaching opportunities about gentleness and responsibility. Life was good, better than good. Bella sometimes woke in the middle of the night, listening to Isaac's steady breathing beside her and Daniel's soft snores from his cradle, and marveled at how far she had come from that terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Wood River. She thought less and less about James Halstead and her time in Denver. It felt like a different life, something that had happened to a different person. The money she had taken remained hidden and untouched. She and Isaac had discussed what to do with it several times, and finally decided that if enough time passed without anyone coming to claim it, they would donate it to build a proper school building for the town. 2 years passed. Then 3. Daniel grew from a baby into a toddler, then into a bright and curious little boy who loved books and horses in equal measure. Bella continued teaching, watching her students grow and graduate, welcoming new children into her classroom. The lending library expanded. The town prospered. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Then, on a cold November morning in 1878, everything threatened to fall apart. Bella was teaching a mathematics lesson when Harold Morrison appeared in the doorway of the schoolhouse, his face grave. "Miss Jensen." "Sorry, Mrs. Cross." "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Something in his tone made Bella's blood run cold. She asked the older students to supervise the younger ones and stepped outside. "There's a man in town," Morrison said without preamble. "Came in on this morning's stage. He's asking questions about a woman who matches your description. Says he's a Pinkerton detective looking for someone involved in a fraud case in Denver." The world tilted. Bella grabbed the door frame to steady herself. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing yet. I came straight here." "But Bella, he's going to find you. It's a small town and you're not exactly invisible." Morrison's expression was kind but concerned. "Is what he's saying true? Were you involved in fraud?" "Not the way he's suggesting." Bella's mind raced. After all this time, she had let herself believe she was safe. But of course, James Halstead had not forgotten about his missing money. Of course, he had finally tracked her down. "Harold, I need to speak with Isaac. Can you keep the detective occupied for a little while?" "I'll do my best." "But Bella, you need to be honest with Isaac about whatever this is. No more secrets." She nodded, though Isaac already knew the worst of it. What she needed now was his support, his strength, his belief that their future mattered more than her past. Bella dismissed school early, inventing a sudden illness that was not entirely a lie. She felt sick with fear. She bundled Daniel into his warm coat and hurried to where she had tied her horse. The ride to the ranch had never felt longer. Isaac was in the barn when she arrived, repairing a saddle. He looked up with a smile that faded immediately when he saw her face. "Bella, what's wrong? Is Daniel all right?" "Daniel's fine. But Isaac, there's a Pinkerton detective in town. He's asking about me, about Denver." Isaac set down the saddle and came to her immediately, taking her hands. "All right, take a deep breath. Tell me exactly what Morrison said." Bella repeated the conversation, her voice shaking. "Isaac, what are we going to do if he arrests me if they take me back to Denver to stand trial?" "That's not going to happen." Isaac's voice was firm. "We're going to handle this together. First, I want you and Daniel to stay here with Margaret. Don't go back to town. Then I'm going to ride in and talk to this detective myself." Isaac, no, you can't get involved in this. I'm your husband. I'm already involved. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. Bella, listen to me. You're not alone in this. You have me, you have Margaret and Thomas. You have this entire community that loves you. We're not going to let some detective from Denver destroy the life you've built here. But the money. If he knows about the money, then we'll give it back. We've never spent it anyway. We'll return it and explain the circumstances. Maybe they won't press charges once they have the money returned. Bella wanted to believe him, but fear had its claws in her. She had always known this day might come, and now that it was here, all her old terror came rushing back. Margaret appeared in the barn doorway. I heard voices. What's going on? Isaac quickly explained the situation. Margaret's expression went through several changes before settling on determined. Bella, you and Daniel come to the house with me. Isaac, you be careful in town, and if that detective wants to take her anywhere, he's going to have to go through all of us first. The fierce loyalty in Margaret's voice brought tears to Bella's eyes. She let Margaret lead her to the house while Isaac saddled his horse. Before he left, he cupped Bella's face and kissed her gently. Trust me, he said. Our future matters more than your past. I meant that when I said it, and I mean it now. We're going to get through this. Bella watched him ride away, her heart in her throat. Daniel tugged at her skirt, sensing something was wrong, and she picked him up and held him close. Margaret brought her tea and sat with her while the afternoon dragged by with agonizing slowness. Isaac returned as the sun was setting, his expression unreadable. Bella stood up so quickly she almost knocked over her chair. What happened? I talked to the detective. His name is Vernon Shaw, and he's been tracking you for the better part of 2 years. Isaac came inside and accepted the coffee Margaret handed him. He says James Halstead filed charges against you for theft. There's a warrant for your arrest in Colorado. Bella's knees went weak and she sank back into her chair. So he's going to take me back? Not necessarily. Isaac sat down across from her. I told him the whole story. Everything you told me about Halstead, about the fraud, about why you took the money. I also told him we still have the money and are willing to return it. And he's thinking about it. Shaw is a Pinkerton, but he's also a decent man. He was uncomfortable with some of the details I shared, particularly about Halstead convincing you to come to Denver under false pretenses of marriage. That's not illegal, but it shows Halstead's character. But will it be enough? Isaac reached across the table and took her hand. I also told him what you've done here. How you're educating 25 children who had no teacher. How you're a respected member of the community. How you're a wife and mother now. I told him that taking you away from here would hurt a lot of innocent people, especially your students and our son. What did he say to that? He said he needs to think about it. He's staying at the boarding house tonight. He wants to meet with both of us tomorrow morning. Isaac squeezed her hand. Bella, there's something else. I asked around town after I talked to Shaw. It seems James Halstead is not pursuing this case himself. What do you mean? I mean Halstead disappeared about 6 months after you left Denver, took off with whatever money he had left and vanished. The investors he defrauded are the ones who hired the Pinkertons, and they're primarily interested in recovering their losses, not in punishing you. Hope flickered in Bella's chest. So if we return the money, there's a good chance this whole thing goes away. Shaw said as much. The investors just want their money back. They don't care about you. Bella closed her eyes, feeling tears leak out from under her lids. After all this time, after all this fear, it was just about the money. That's usually what it's about, Isaac said gently. Money and pride. But Bella, even if Shaw decides to take you in, even if you have to go before a judge, I'm going with you. You won't face this alone. But Daniel, the ranch. Margaret and Thomas can handle the ranch, and Daniel comes with us. You're not leaving our son, and I'm not leaving you. We're a family, and we're staying together no matter what." The simple certainty in his voice steadied her. Bella opened her eyes and looked at her husband, this good man who had chosen to love her despite everything. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "You deserve everything good in this world," Isaac replied. "And tomorrow we're going to fight for our future together." They stayed at the ranch that night, and Bella barely slept. She lay in Isaac's arms, listening to Daniel breathe in his small bed nearby, and prayed for the strength to face whatever was coming. The next morning they rode into town together, Daniel bundled between them on the wagon seat. Agnes Carmichael met them outside the boarding house, her expression anxious. "The detective is waiting in the dining room," she said. "Bella, dear, I just want you to know that everyone in town is on your side. Whatever happened before, you're one of us now." Bella squeezed her hand gratefully, then followed Isaac inside. Vernon Shaw was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes. He stood when they entered, nodding politely. "Mrs. Cross, thank you for coming." They sat down at the table, Daniel on Bella's lap. Isaac positioned himself close to her, his presence a solid wall of support. Shaw studied them for a long moment before speaking. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've tracked down all kinds of people. Thieves, murderers, con artists. People who would do anything to avoid facing justice." He paused. "Mrs. Cross, I spent yesterday afternoon talking to people in this town. Your students' parents, the town council, the shopkeepers. Do you know what they all said?" Bella shook her head, not trusting her voice. "They said you're the best thing that's happened to Wood River in years. They said their children are learning and thriving under your instruction. They said you're kind and generous and hardworking. Not a single person had a bad word to say about you." "She's a good woman," Isaac said firmly. "Whatever happened in Denver, she's built a good life here. She's making a real difference." Shaw nodded. "I can see that. And I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Cross. The story your husband told me yesterday about James Halstead doesn't surprise me. We've been investigating Halstead's operations, and it's clear he was running multiple frauds. Several women have come forward saying he made them similar promises of marriage as a way to exploit them." Bella's breath caught. "I wasn't the only one." "No, madam. You were just the only one brave enough to get away." Shaw pulled some papers from his case. "I spoke with my superiors this morning via telegraph. Here's what they're proposing. You return the $3,000 you took from Halstead. In exchange, the investors agree not to press charges. The warrant for your arrest is withdrawn. You're free to continue your life here without any legal consequences." It took a moment for his words to sink in. When they did, Bella felt like she might faint from relief. "They'll drop the charges, just like that, just like that. The investors care about money, not revenge. And frankly, after hearing about what Halstead did to you, I think they feel you're as much a victim as they are." Shaw slid the papers across the table. "This is a legal agreement. Sign it. Return the money, and this whole matter is settled." Bella looked at Isaac, who was smiling. "It's over," he said softly. "It's finally over." She signed the papers with a shaking hand. Then they rode back to the cottage, retrieved the money from its hiding place in the wall, and brought it to Shaw. He counted it carefully, then nodded. $3,000 as claimed. Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Cross." He stood and offered his hand. "I wish you all the best. You've built a good life here. Hold on to it." After Shaw left on the afternoon stage, Bella and Isaac walked slowly back to their house. Daniel ran ahead of them, chasing a butterfly, blissfully unaware of how close they had come to losing everything. "It's really over," Bella said wonderingly. "After all this time, all this fear, it's just over." I told you our future mattered more than your past, Isaac said, pulling her close. Did you believe me now? I do. I really do. She turned in his arms to face him. Isaac, I spent so long carrying my regrets, so long afraid that my past would destroy any chance at happiness. But you never let me give up on the future. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You believed in me when I had stopped believing. That's what love is, Bella. It's choosing someone, all of them, past and present and future. It's saying that who we are together matters more than who we were before. He kissed her forehead. I chose you the day I picked up your handkerchief. And I choose you again every single day. Tears streamed down Bella's face, but they were good tears, healing tears. I choose you too, and I choose this life we've built. I choose our son, our family, our future. I choose it all. They stood there in the middle of the street, holding each other while Daniel played nearby and the afternoon sun shone down on them. The past was finally, truly behind them. The future stretched out ahead, full of promise and possibility. That evening, they had dinner with Margaret and Thomas, celebrating the resolution of what could have been a disaster. Tommy Wallace, now almost 11 and excelling in school, gave a toast declaring that Miss Jensen, now Mrs. Cross, was the finest teacher in all of Nevada. I'll drink to that, Isaac said, raising his glass. To Bella Cross, the woman who came to Wood River with regret but stayed to build a future. The woman who teaches our children, loves our son, and makes me happier than I ever thought possible. To my wife, who proves every day that where we're going matters more than where we've been. Everyone drank to the toast, and Bella felt love wash over her in waves. This was her family now. These people, this place, this life. She had traveled a hard road to get here, made mistakes, carried burdens she thought would crush her. But she had survived. More than survived, she had built something beautiful. The years that followed were rich and full. Daniel grew into a bright, kind boy who loved books and horses with equal passion. When he was 4, Bella gave birth to twin daughters they named Grace and Hope, beautiful names for beautiful girls who brought twice the chaos and twice the joy into their lives. Isaac added onto their house to accommodate the growing family, and Bella continued teaching, though she reduced her hours during the baby's first year. The little lending library grew into a full-town library, housed in a building donated by one of the miners who had struck silver. Bella organized regular reading groups and worked with Harold Morrison to expand the collection. Education became a point of pride for Wood River, and children from their school went on to universities and successful careers, carrying with them the foundation Bella had given them. Tommy Wallace became one of Bella's greatest successes. He graduated from her school at 14, then attended university in San Francisco, studying law. He returned to Nevada and became a lawyer dedicated to helping ordinary people fight for their rights. He always credited Mrs. Cross with inspiring his love of learning and justice. Margaret and Thomas had 2 more children, adding to the chaos and joy of family gatherings. The ranch prospered under Isaac's careful management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the region. But Isaac never lost sight of what mattered most. He made sure to spend time with his children every day, teaching them about ranching and reading them stories at night. He supported Bella's teaching career without question, proud of the difference she made in young lives, and he loved her. Every single day, in big ways and small, Isaac Cross loved his wife with a steadiness that still made Bella's heart flutter even after years of marriage. He brought her wildflowers in the summer and kept her warm in the winter. He listened when she talked about her students and valued her opinions on ranch matters. He made her laugh and held her when she cried. He was her partner, her best friend, her love. On their 10th wedding anniversary, They returned to Eagle Point where Isaac had proposed all those years ago. The children stayed with Margaret and Thomas, giving them a rare day alone together. They sat on the same flat rock where they had shared their first picnic, looking out over the valley that was home. The aspen trees were gold again, just as they had been that first time, and the air smelled of autumn. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Giving up the possibility of teaching in a big city, of having more opportunities?" "Never," Bella said firmly. "This is where I belong. This is where I was meant to be all along. I just had to take a hard road to get here." "Well, I'm grateful you did. I'm grateful that stagecoach broke down and you came to Wood River. I'm grateful that I was in town that day to pick up your handkerchief. I'm grateful for every single thing that brought you to me." Bella turned to look at her husband, this man who had saved her not by rescuing her but by believing in her. His hair had a bit more gray now, and lines crinkled around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But he was still the same man who had told her that their future mattered more than her past, the same man who had loved her when she was broken and helped her become whole. "I love you, Isaac Cross," she said. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for seeing who I could be when I could only see who I had been. I love you too, Bella Cross, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." He pulled her close and kissed her, and it felt just as magical as their first kiss all those years ago. They sat together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The future stretched before them, full of promise. There would be more children to raise, more students to teach, more years to build their life together. There would be challenges and joys, sorrows and celebrations. But they would face it all together, partners in the truest sense. Bella thought about that frightened woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Wood River over 10 years ago. That woman who had been carrying so much regret, so much fear, so much shame about her past. She wanted to reach back through time and tell that woman that everything would be all right, that she would find love and acceptance and a place to belong, that she would build a life worth living, but that woman would not have believed her. She had to walk the path herself, had to learn through experience that the past did not have to define the future. That regret could be transformed into wisdom, that mistakes could be redeemed through better choices. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, noticing her faraway expression. "Just about how far we've come," Bella said. "About how different my life is now from what I thought it would be, about how grateful I am for second chances." "We all deserve second chances," Isaac said, "and you've made the most of yours. Look at what you've built, Bella. Not just our family, but the school, the library, the impact you've had on hundreds of children. That's a legacy that will last long after we're gone." He was right. Whatever regrets she had about her past were far outweighed by the good she had done since. Every child who learned to read, every student who went on to build a better life, every person who borrowed a book from the library and discovered new worlds, they were all part of her legacy. "Our future really did matter more than my past," Bella said softly. "You were right all along." "I usually am," Isaac said with a grin that made her laugh and swat his arm. "But seriously, Bella, you're the one who made our future matter. You're the one who chose to keep going, to build something new, to believe that better days were possible. I just got lucky enough to be part of it." As darkness fell and stars began to appear in the vast Nevada sky, they packed up their things and rode back toward home. The lights of their house glowed in the distance, a beacon calling them back to the life they had built together. Inside, their children were waiting. Daniel would want to tell them about the book he was reading. Grace and Hope would be excited about some adventure they had with their cousins. There would be chaos and noise and the beautiful mess of family life, and Bella would not trade it for anything in the world. Years continued to pass in their gentle rhythm. Daniel married a teacher himself, a sweet woman named Catherine who joined him in his law practice as a clerk. He often credited his mother with inspiring both his career and his choice of wife, saying he had always known he wanted to marry someone who valued education and justice the way Mrs. Cross did. Grace became a doctor, one of the first female physicians in Nevada, while Hope took over managing the ranch with Isaac, proving that women could handle cattle and horses just as well as any man. Both daughters inherited their mother's intelligence and their father's determination. The school in Wood River continued to thrive, eventually requiring a second teacher to handle all the students. Bella mentored several young teachers over the years, passing on not just her educational methods but her belief that every child deserved a chance to learn and grow, regardless of their background. The library became one of the finest in the territory, with regular donations from families whose children had been taught by Mrs. Cross. A plaque was mounted inside the door, dedicating the building to Bella Cross, who had brought the gift of learning to Wood River. Isaac remained the steady, loving presence he had always been. As they grew older together, their love only deepened. They faced the challenges of aging with grace and humor, supporting each other through aches and pains and the inevitable losses that come with long life. Margaret passed first, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 68. Thomas followed 2 years later, unable to live long without his beloved wife. Bella mourned her friend deeply, but she was grateful for all the years they had shared, for the support Margaret had given her from the very beginning. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Isaac gave Bella a leather-bound journal. Inside the cover he had written, "To my darling Bella, who came to Wood River with regret but stayed to build a beautiful life. May these pages hold our memories, our love, and the story of how our future always mattered more than our past. With all my love, forever and always, Isaac." Bella cried when she read it, then spent the evening filling pages with memories of their life together. She wrote about meeting Isaac, about the Pinkerton detective who had almost destroyed everything, about watching their children grow, about all the small moments and big events that had made up their marriage. She wrote about students who had gone on to do remarkable things, about community celebrations and quiet evenings on the porch, about losses and triumphs, sorrows and joys, about a life well lived, built on a foundation of love and forgiveness, and the belief that tomorrow could always be better than yesterday. As Bella grew older, she gradually retired from teaching, though she never stopped working with the library and mentoring young teachers. She became a grandmother multiple times over, delighting in Daniel's 3 children and the various offspring of Grace and Hope. Her grandchildren called her Nana Bella and loved hearing her stories about the old days. Isaac remained active on the ranch well into his 70s, though he finally let Hope take over most of the day-to-day operations. He spent his mornings working with the horses, which he claimed kept him young, and his afternoons with Bella, reading or taking slow walks around their property. They grew old together, their hair silver, their movements slower, but their love as strong as ever. On quiet evenings, sitting on their porch watching the sunset, they would hold hands and remember everything they had been through together. "You have any regrets?" Bella asked him one evening when they were both in their 80s. Isaac considered the question seriously. "Only one," he said finally. "I regret that I didn't have even more years with you, but since I can't control that, I choose to be grateful for every single day we've had instead." Bella squeezed his hand, her eyes misty. "You changed my life, Isaac Cross. You took a broken woman and helped her become whole. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You built a future with me when I thought I had none. We built it together, Isaac corrected gently. You did the hard work, Bella. You chose to move forward. You chose to teach and love and build a life worth living. I just had the privilege of being by your side while you did it. They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, the same colors it had painted that first evening at Eagle Point so many years ago. Their story had been a long one, full of challenges and triumphs, mistakes and redemptions. But through it all, they had held to the truth Isaac had spoken that first night at the ranch. The future had mattered more than the past. Their love had been stronger than regret. And together, they had built something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. Isaac Cross passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84, with Bella holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, as one mourns the loss of half their soul, but she did not fall apart. Isaac had taught her to be strong, to keep moving forward, to believe in tomorrow. Bella lived another 3 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, continuing her work with the library, and writing in the journal Isaac had given her. She filled page after page with memories, wanting future generations to know the story of how their grandfather had saved their grandmother not by rescuing her, but by believing in her. On a warm spring day in 1910, Bella Cross died quietly in her sleep, surrounded by family and filled with peace. She was 85 years old and had lived a full, rich life beyond anything she could have imagined that day. She stepped off the stagecoach in Wood River. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she had touched. Former students, now middle-aged adults with children of their own, spoke about how Mrs. Cross had changed their lives. Tommy Wallace, now a distinguished judge, gave a moving eulogy about the teacher who had taught him to believe in justice. Her children and grandchildren shared stories that made the congregation laugh and cry. But perhaps the most moving tribute came from her oldest grandson, who read from the journal Isaac had given her. He read his grandfather's words about how Bella had come to Wood River with regret, but stayed to build a beautiful life. How their future had always mattered more than their past. My grandmother taught me many things, he said, closing the journal. But the most important lesson was this: our mistakes do not define us. Our past does not imprison us. What matters is what we choose to do moving forward, how we choose to love, how we choose to serve, how we choose to build lives of meaning and purpose. He looked out at the assembled crowd. Bella Cross made mistakes in her youth. She carried regrets for years, but she did not let them destroy her. Instead, she used them to become stronger, wiser, more compassionate. She spent 50 years teaching children, building a library, serving this community. That is her legacy. That is what we should remember. She was buried next to Isaac in the small cemetery on a hill overlooking Wood River. A simple headstone marked their resting place. Isaac Cross, 1842–1926, and Bella Cross, 1845–1930. Beloved husband and wife, parents and grandparents, their future mattered more than their past. In the years that followed, the library she had built continued to serve the community. The school she had revitalized continued to educate children. The students she had taught went on to teach their own children and grandchildren the lessons she had imparted. And in family gatherings, around dinner tables and fireplaces, her descendants told the story of how their grandmother had come to Wood River running from her past, and how their grandfather had loved her enough to help her build a future. They told it as a love story, which it was, but also as a story of redemption, of second chances, of the power of choosing hope over regret. The story of Bella and Isaac Cross became part of the fabric of Wood River, passed down through generations. It reminded people that everyone deserves a second chance, that love can heal old wounds. that the future is always more important than the past. And in that small Nevada town, in the library that still bore her name, Bella's journal was eventually preserved and displayed. Visitors could read her words, could see the transformation from frightened woman to beloved teacher, wife, and mother. They could see proof that regret does not have to be the end of the story, that with courage and love and support, anyone can build a life worth living. The legacy of Bella and Isaac Cross lived on, not just in their descendants but in the values they had embodied. Love over judgment, future over past, compassion over condemnation. These were the lessons they had lived by, and they continued to shape Wood River long after both of them were gone. Their story became a testament to the power of second chances, to the healing nature of true love, to the importance of believing that tomorrow can always be better than yesterday. It proved that where you have been matters less than where you are going, and that with the right person by your side, even the heaviest regrets can be transformed into wisdom. And so the tale of the cowboy who believed in futures over pasts, and the woman who learned to believe with him, lived on through the decades. It reminded everyone who heard it that redemption is always possible. Love can conquer fear, and the future will always matter more than the past ever did.